So I wanted to kick things off. It's fair to say that all of you are kind of creating new products in industries that have existed for a long time. So food delivery, pedometers, new product discovery, photo editing. Do you think there's been shifts in technology or consumer behavior that's really allowed your businesses to start growing and really succeed in places that have kind of gone to the wayside?
Yeah, I can start there if you like. I mean, for us, there's been an explosion in mobile photos in the last few years. Like, no surprises there. As a global population, we'll take about 500 billion photos this year, and about 50% of those will be on the mobile device. But what's interesting when you look at the activity there is that those photos are not all just portraits and beautiful landscapes, right? Especially on mobile, people use images and photos as a means of communication. So if you're using, say, an app to do restaurant reviews, right, you're not going to sit there and tap out 1,000 words about the beautiful meal you've just had. You're going to snap a photo and touch it up quickly and post it, right? Or if you're in a messaging app trying to convey how you feel today, again, you're not going to write a diary entry of 1,000 words. You'll snap a quick selfie and add a sticker to it and post it quickly. So what we've seen is definitely an explosion in mobile photos, but it's really been driven by this explosion of apps that are kind of enabling image and photos as a means of communication. And those developers want to offer photo editing in their apps and services, and it was really satisfying that demand that was the driver for the first instance of the Aviary set of SDKs and APIs.
So do you guys have stats around it being food, selfies, photos of dogs and babies for mobile apps?
In that order, it's pretty much 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Sometimes dogs. On the West Coast, it's more dogs, actually.
At Stella Sarver, for anyone who's wondering, that's my dog's Twitter account. Follow her.
I think that at Order-In, we're tracking a number of macro trends. The explosion of e-commerce for restaurants, so online food ordering and mobile food ordering. I think we're also tracking greater interest in APIs and greater awareness from sort of the publisher community. But in many respects, people still don't always understand what we do because the consumer experience and the merchant experience typically has formed around an individual restaurant and an individual consumer connecting to order food. So why do you need an API for that is often what I get, or why do, are you even going to be around in a year? And I'm thinking to myself, jerk. And then I think, are you? I think the bottom line is that there are a lot of very interesting technological trends happening now that are enabling new and creative uses for APIs. And there are a lot of consumer trends that can be addressed uniquely by APIs. And I think whether it's an internal business purpose or a consumer purpose.
So Birchbox is really working with the trend of people increasingly shopping online. The challenging thing in the beauty space is that it's reasonably easy to replenish when you're shopping online, but when you're looking at buying a product that you've never bought before, typically people want to touch it, smell it, feel it, put it on their skin, see what it's going to be like. And so part of the way Birchbox solves that problem is via the subscription services, which helps you learn about whole new categories of products, but also helps you sort of touch, feel, try in a sample size version. So that's sort of part of the way we're like helping people actually buy beauty online, which is something people want to do, particularly if you live in parts of the country where you don't have as easy access to some of the things we say have in New York. Some of the other trends from a technical perspective that help companies like Birchbox get off the ground is easier access to, say, open source e-commerce systems. And there's other kinds of trends more from a business perspective, which is, you can use a 3PL pretty easily at this point in time. And so that's very helpful in order to help you scale your business, particularly initially.
Yep. For RunKeeper, it's really been a few different waves, culturally and technology, that have really helped. The demand for people to know more about themselves and to stay fit, and along with the explosion in mobile have all attributed. And then the API kind of came after the app, and that was again because of the demand for partners to kind of work with us and work with our users. Yep.
So obviously we're at the Business of APIs conference, but we would be astray if we didn't say There's been this kind of thought that if you build an API, they will come. Developers, innovation, reduce time to market. True or false?
True and false. In my opinion, APIs are often thought of as a cool thing to do when you have another business and you don't want to feel like you're getting left out. We treat our API and all the tools on our platform as the product, as the business. And we invest in it, we care for it, we are incredibly responsive on customer service matters. We're always looking at ways to improve it. And as a result, it's successful. If you launch an API and you can't think of any reason other than why, other than it's cool, or you assume that everybody else needs to get access to your content of some sort without really thinking through what the value is, it will probably wind up with, crickets chirping in its documentation pages.
I'd just like to echo that. So Aviary is my second API company. The first one was called One Riot. It started off as a search engine that had a differentiated way of search. No need to get into the details, but in order to build a critical mass there, we opened an API and just assumed everybody would come in and suck in our amazing search results. And we probably spent about $10 million trying to make that happen. And I hustled my ass off for about 3 years and got about 300 people to do that. And then, Aviary offers APIs and SDKs for something that actually people want. And we started off by meeting a demand rather than just pushing something out and hoping people would come. This year alone, right, we've grown from about 1,500 partners in January to over 6,000 now. We've grown from servicing 15 million MAUs in December to over 70 now. So, if you build it and it's useful and it meets a demand, they will come. If you build it and it doesn't really mean that much to anyone, like to your point, crickets emerge, and that can be very, very expensive.
And definitely, while the demand has to be there, this building it is not just building the API itself. Like, there's definitely a lot around building the team that's going to support that, even if it's just one person at first, and someone else to kind of like evangelize it in a way too. And that's really, really helped us to really get the API kind of to the next level and be taken seriously, and get some big partners in there too.
And I would also like to add, you need to know as a company what you're doing, and everybody needs to know as a company. What I think a big risk is when somebody at senior leadership at a company says, we need an API, and they assign a task force to go do it, and that task force builds something, probably spends a fortune doing it, but the rest of the company doesn't really know what's going on, and no one's really figured out how to incorporate it into their larger goals. So mid-year appraisal comes around, and nobody even knows how to assess the people who worked on that project, and then year-end comes around, and bonuses are divvied up, and nobody's really supported because they worried it's going to cannibalize some other piece of the business. An API, it is your business if you do it. So treat it as such and make sure your whole organization understands what you're doing, whether you're a small startup or a big brand.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And to sort of echo, Joe's point as well, right? If the API is your business, clearly you're out there marketing the crap out of it and supporting the developer community and evangelizing. And, we even run quarterly hackathons called Photo Hack Day, where we'll get, 500 or 600 developers in a room for the weekend building photo apps for us. But I've also worked in large companies, the largest company, Walmart, where the bright sparks in the CTO office wanted to launch APIs, but without leaning in and providing that level of evangelism and internal marketing and support that's required, almost treating it as it was, as if it was its own business, then it just falls flat on its face, right? So it isn't a case of launch it and they will come, whether it's your own company or internally. You have to lean in and provide the support, the evangelism, and basically go cultivate a developer community on top of it, right? That is the way to kickstart the momentum of that platform.
So how do you do that in terms of cultivating this developer community? So if you want to show and prove that it's successful, and I think you do have large development communities. You have your internal developers, you have your partner developers, and your external. So how do you prioritize and know who to cultivate and who to put the evangelists on and who to put the business development folks with? Or if anyone knows?
People.
This isn't being broadcast anywhere. No, this is totally off the record.
It has earmuffs on, all
Yes.
earmuffs.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the mistake that many people with an API make when they want to engage the developer community is tell the developer community what they want them to do. I want you to use my API to build X, or I want you